Yo everyone, today I'm going to give you a complete setup guide for F1 2025, going through in intricate detail about every single setup item, and additionally areas of a track that you can be looking to understand each individual advantage or disadvantage from changing that setup item. So with that being said, we're going to jump into the garage and get straight into the heart of the video. For the purpose of the day, we're just on Silverstone, but you can do this on pretty much any other track as well. A key criteria is it has a high speed corner, a medium speed corner, and a low speed corner as well. Silverstone has all of those things, so it's a great test bed to understand setup development. So what we're going to do is go over the setup item to start with, and then go out on track to a specific corner type and give you a reference for corners that you can use to adjust that setup item with. So the front wing and aerodynamics as a generalization are pretty simple. If you go higher on the aerodynamics, you get more grip, but you end up with more drag. So you go faster around the corner, but slower down the straights. This is also a very critical setup development item for understanding car balance and how you can be using it to your advantage. If you go higher on your front wing, you're going to get more turn in, and if you go lower on the front wing, you're going to get less turn in, i.e. less grip during the corner. Going out on track right now, good corners to be understanding the front wing on, especially high speed and medium speed corners as well. So the front wing is going to make a very small difference during corners like this. It will still have a bit of a balance change, but ultimately it's going to be a medium speed corners that you're going to be really feeling that difference of. So let's fast forward to a medium speed corner. As you can see now, coming into Brooklands, and this is a really good example of where front wings can make a big difference with rotating the car. So going through Brooklands and Luffield as well. Later in the lap, we have Maggers and Beckett's, and that is also a fantastic example of high-speed corners. First of all, though, we have Copse Corner. This can also be a good item to be testing your front wing, wing angle with, but especially going through Maggers and Beckett's right now. If you have a bit of understeer through here, then you want to go higher on the front wing. If you have a bit of oversteer, then you can go down on the front wing angle to combat that. Now, let's move on to the rear wing angle. And to be honest, it's going to be very, very similar to that front wing development and how you want to be viewing it. If you go higher on the rear wing, then you are going to end up with more drag, but a dramatic amount of downforce to be gained, and it is just going to be that kind of pattern that if you go higher on the wings, you're going to get more grip around the corner but much more drag down the straights. So it's really important to find a really good balance between the two and making sure that your car is as fast down the straights as possible but without compromising corner and grip to a negative circumstance. And what I mean by that is, of course, in a perfect world, we're fast around the corners and fast down the straights, but in a realistic world, it's a balance between the two. It's spinning plates and balancing the two objects of being quick down the straights but just about quick enough in the corners as well, and that's where you'll find the optimal lap time performance. If you want to be searching out how to understand the rear wing balance, especially, it's going to be coming in the medium speed and the high speed corners as well. Additionally though, it does have a bit of a tendency to be helping out the traction of the car. So if you are searching for more traction in the car, you could also be playing around on corner exits such as that, and generally low speed corners on the traction phase as well. So if the car is sliding around, then you can go higher on the rear wing during Abbey, here in turn 1 at Silverstone, and on the entry it won't make too much difference in the low speed, but on the traction and the rear stability on the exit of the corner, it will make a big difference as well. Much like Brooklands and Luffield, it will be making a big difference. So what we're going to do is get back to the garage, as I've already shown you those corner example types for the downforce level. Going into the garage right now, the next setup item is going to be the on and off throttle differential. These are very, very, very powerful items to be adjusting within the setup. To be honest, on F1 2025, in my experience, just locking the on-throttle differential to 100% is the best way to go about it. Normally, this is not the case, and a good way to sort of be testing out and understanding that on-throttle differential is going on track. And if you're looking at the rear tires at the moment, a 100% locked differential means that the rear tires are forced to spin at the same speed. The reason that's important, as if you go through a corner, the inside tyre has to travel a shorter distance than the outside tyre, thus meaning they want to be spinning at an independent speed to maximise their grip potential and optimisation of the car going around the corner. The lower that you go on the on-throttle differential, the more rotation you'll have when you're on the power. The higher that you go, the more stability you'll have at the risk of understeer. But on F1 2025, in my opinion, there's some more detail to go into with the game, and something I don't understand what happened in the game code. In summary, I think it's a little bit broken. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to the game developers, because to be honest, they're smarter than I am, and they develop a game that I couldn't. So I don't mean that disrespectfully to the developers, but I think it is a bit of a broken setup item. That running at close, if not always at 100%, is the optimal way for lap time performance. But in reality, you should be playing with this and changing it from a high-speed corner to a low-speed corner to optimize the car's grip profile and to be maximizing the lap time potential of the car. But again, like I say, I run it pretty much always at 100% in this year's iteration of the Formula 1 game, just because that's the fastest way to go about this year's game. With the off-throttle differential, it is the same, but the opposite. You know, it's the same concept, but applied in the opposite way. So you're going to see 25% is what it's set to right now, and the same is true, but instead of being on the throttle, the clue is in the name, it's going to be off the throttle instead. The real key areas that this is going to be affecting you is when you're turning in from around this part of the corner to the late phase of the braking, and as you start to turn the car into the apex during this phase of the corner. Of course, the higher off-throttle differential percentage you have, the more stability in the car you're going to get. The lower off-throttle differential that you have, then it's going to be meaning that the car has more rotation but a higher risk of snap oversteer and bringing instability within the car. So you have to be really careful with this and find a good balance. A general setting that is good, it's anywhere between 25 and 40 on F1 2025. Some tracks may require higher and some tracks may allow you to go lower, but like I say, this is a key area of the corner that you want to be identifying if it's the off-throttle differential to be the problem with the setup development path that you're on. So in summary, anywhere between turning in and the mid-corner clipping point is where the off-throttle differential is going to be affecting you. And if you're having too much instability, then I recommend going up on that off-throttle differential. If you're having too much understeer on the turn into the corner, then I recommend going down on that off-throttle differential setting. Moving back into the garage and getting back into the next setup item, what is going to be the setup of the suspension. On this year's game, to be honest, we're just not going to touch this. It is, in my opinion, again, I don't mean it in a disrespectful way to developers of the game, but it's just a very broken setting that you just slam it all the way to the left in basically all situations. On this time, the front toe has just been put to 0.01 with the time trial world record setup from Silverstone, but yeah, it just makes no difference at all. What is happening in reality though, the camber of the front and rear tires is basically toeing in, so when you're cornering, it means that the tire is then sat flat. If you look at a Formula 1 car, Brazil GP, actually happening today, this will be going out on Monday, so just after the Brazilian GP. But anyway, if you look at a real Formula 1 car, you see that the tyre sort of sits slightly slanted inwards, and that means that the negative camber of the tyres is going to be pulled straight once there's cornering forces on the tyre, maximizing the contact patch of the tyre to the road. Because ultimately, that's all what it's about, is maximizing the tyre profile, tyre friction that you can be getting to the tarmac of the racing surface to be maximizing the grip and lap time potential that you have underneath you. So that's what the camber is doing, is just meaning that you have different angles of the tyre that you're sat stationary with and trying to maximize the contact patch of the tyre for when you are turning. The toe in is basically going to be helping you get more sharpness from the front end going into the corner. And yeah, the higher that you go, you'll get more of a sharp end turning in, well, I should say sharp front end when turning into the corner. But this does come at a massive sacrifice for the after that. You know, you can get much sharper turn in, but then you get dramatic understeer from that point onwards if you have too much front toe out. With the rear toe in, this aids stability. So if you go higher and higher and higher on this is just going to be meaning that the rear has more stability as you turn in, but this will just cause dramatic understeer if you go too far with this. Like I say, on F1 2025, these settings really don't matter, to be honest. You just slam it all the way to the left and off you go. Speaking about the front suspension, to be honest, I'm running between 40-41 on this game, just changing a little bit how many curbs that I'm using. Maybe on Singapore, I will go to 40 just to help the stability of the front axle going over the curbing. But this has a major effect to the cornering stability of the car as well, and also the braking stability, because when you're braking, all the force goes to the front axle of the car, and as you can see, in terms of what's actually happening with the car, you're going to get loads and loads of grip and downforce and g-force on the front axle, and the stiffer that the front suspension is, it's going to be bringing more stability. If you have too soft of a front suspension, what's going to happen when you hit the brake pedal is all the weight is going to go straight away to the front axle. And then if the suspension is not stiff enough to be dealing with that extra g-force and load of the car pushing it into the tarmac, then the car is going to be very unstable in the braking zone and lead to a lot of lack of confidence, to be honest. So like I say, if you want the car to be a little bit better over the curbings, then I would recommend going to maybe 40, whereas if you want the car to be better in the high-speed corners and general braking stability, then I would stay with 41. There isn't really a corner on Silverstone that I can show a good example of this, but like I say, on 41 front suspension, then I would go the higher speed corners such as Max and Beckett's. But if I wanted to go to 40 on the suspension, then tracks like Singapore or what have very big curbstones around them, then you maybe want to start considering going down to 40 to help get the car up and over the curbing without making instability as well. So then the rear suspension, to be honest, is very much about just putting it as low as possible to maximize the traction of the car. So there is a bit of a thing here though. Most setups, to be honest, just run 1 on the rear suspension, as that's going to be helping maximize the traction of the car. But also on a very, 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 very subtle detail, the softer rear suspension can also help you with better top speed. So when you're driving down the straights, of course, downforce is building up on the car. So the higher speed that you go, the more downforce that you get, what means ultimately the suspension is being compressed into the road. With the modern ground effect cars, the closer that you are to the road, the better aerodynamical efficiency that you get. So you actually end up with higher top speed by being lower because you get less drag by the car, just marginally, but to be honest, that can make a difference of a few miles an hour, so it's definitely worth having. So, with the 1 on the rear suspension, then you can end up with a situation that you have fantastic traction coming out of the corners, but then because the rear of the car starts squatting down with the extra g-force and load being applied to it like we have right now, then it's going to lower the rear ride height slightly just on the straights, leading to a better top speed potential. The area that having 1 on the rear suspension is just too extreme sometimes is going through corners such as Max and Beckett's, like here, that having too much compression on the rear tires can end up bringing instability. So sometimes in high speed corners you maybe want to be putting it to like a maximum of 5, and the higher that you go on that rear suspension, it's going to be helping you on higher speed corners. The lower that you go is going to be helping you on lower speed corners as an opposite of that. Tracks such as Qatar, you really want to go high on that rear suspension value, quite simply because there's only 1 real traction zone on that track, and the rest of it is all about car rotation and maximizing the grip in the high speed corners and medium speed corners as well. So that's a generalization, of course, but the more traction zones you have on a track, the more you want that rear suspension to be lower, and the less traction zones you have, then you want to be focusing for the rear suspension to possibly be higher, being maximizing the grip during the high speed corners and the medium speed corners as well. So Over to the anti-roll bars, and to be honest, this is quite a difficult thing to set up. Once you understand the pattern of the setup that you want to have and the philosophy behind it, then these could be really enjoyable to set up. But at first, anti-roll bars are a bit of a pain to be setting up, to be honest, because they take a lot of time, a lot of attention, and they can be ruining or creating massive lap time potential. So if we're speaking about the front anti-roll bar as a generalization, if you go higher, you're going to end up with better turn-in, so you're going to end up with a sharper front end into the corner, but ends up sacrificing a lot of the grip as the corner goes on. So entry, you'll get better turn-in, but then for the rest of the corner, you're going to get more understeer. The opposite is also true, that the lower you go on that front anti-roll bar setting, the less turn-in you're initially going to get, but then you're going to get more grip for the rest of the corner. So that's just something to bear in mind, and something that you can also be playing with on the circuit and to be understanding characteristics is when you go too low on that front anti-roll bar setting, it can also make the front end fall over itself. And what I mean by that is when the suspension and the anti-roll bars are too soft, when you go through a high-speed corner like that happens, you end up with a lot of instability, because what happens is the car is just being pushed down too far on one axle, and what the anti-roll bar is doing is, as it describes, controlling the roll of the car. So when you're turning to the right, loads of weight and g-force and pressure gets put on the left hand side. When you turn to the left, a lot of that weight gets put on the right hand side. So the opposite is always true with the force of being applied to the car in the direction that you're turning. So through the left hander here, a lot of the force is being applied on the right hand side, and what the anti-roll bars are doing is trying to control the roll of the car. If we go in third person camera right now, so going through Brooklands, you're going to see going through here, the roll of the car is quite aggressive, and the higher anti-roll bar you have, the better it controls the roll, and the lower that you have, it just can mean that the suspension overly digs into the circuit and the car, meaning that you just oversaturate the front suspension, leading to a lack of grip, but especially a lack of stability in the car as well. So as a setup reference, it's currently on anti-roll bar setting 1, and as you go through Maggers and Beckett's right now, you're just going to see on the final part of it, through the final right hander, the car will just understeer, because we just run out of suspension travel, and it just means that the roll of the car is too aggressive, and it's just going to be running out of grip. Just going through the replay mode right here, and we're just going to fast forward it up until Maggers and Beckett's, lovely jubbly, get rid of the HUD, and then just gonna see the car just ends up understeering because we run out of suspension travel on the front of the car. And the way you would combat that is by adding a few extra clicks of front anti-roll bar just to stop the car rolling too much into the corner. So if you end up with a sensation in medium speed and high speed corners especially, that the car just runs out of grip halfway around the corner, a good rule of thumb is be checking that front anti-roll bar, as it may just be too soft, and meaning that you're running out of grip, and something that you can change. With that being said then, rear anti-roll bar. The higher that you go, the better rotation you get, but it sacrifices traction a little bit as well, and the opposite is true. The lower that you go, the less rotation you'll get from the car, but slightly better traction. This, to be honest, is applying everywhere. And is really a critical factor of the setup of the car. Generally speaking, with an F1 2025, you more or less want to keep that rear anti-roll bar quite high, as what that's going to do is just help rotate the car around the corner. And simply because we have such a soft rear suspension generally on this game, you can get away with it. Whereas if you go higher and higher and higher on that rear suspension value, generally speaking, you probably want to go lower on that rear anti-roll bar to combat that and to keep traction in the car. But because we have so little rear suspension value on this year's game, you can run the rear anti-roll bar super high and still have phenomenal traction from the car. If you're looking for areas that you can be adjusting this setting with though, you'll be going into sort of any corner, but generally it's just going to be a lack of grip on the rear axle. As you can see, just going through here, we're fighting the car a little bit. Of course, I know the front anti-roll bar is still on 1, so that's aiding to the problem with the instability of the car. But like I say, as a general rule of thumb, the rear anti-roll bar will just bring general lack of rear grip, and it won't really be in one specific area, it'll be in every area while driving the car. And as you can see, just a little bit of tire sliding, big tire sliding there actually. So in that situation, I'd be looking to adjust that rear anti-roll bar down just to help the stability of the car. Of course, in this very specific circumstance, I would look to fix the front anti-roll bar because it is too low at the moment, so I'd probably put it on like 4 and then re-evaluate where I want that rear anti-roll bar to be. But a general rule of thumb, maximize the rear anti-roll bar and balance the front as a net result of it on this year's iteration of the Formula 1 game. Front ride height and ride height in general is very, very, very powerful. It's something that has a lot of grip effect and you really want to maximize it. A way to test the front ride height is simply you want to go as low as possible on that front ride height before you start bottoming out on the straights and losing top speed. A good way to test that, I don't have it activated. Whoa, okay, that's not ideal. Whoa, we saved it, kind of. So I can't blame that on the car. That was just a skill issue. So a way that you can be testing the front ride height is you can see on the top right hand side I had the delta activated. I thought I didn't earlier, my apologies, but it turns out I do, so lovely jubbly. You want to be picking the longest straight down the track and basically comparing if you're going to lose top speed. What happens if the front ride height is too low? It starts scraping along the track surface, leading to a situation you get more friction from the floor of the car scraping over the tarmac surface of the racing track, leading to less top speed down the straight and a negative delta as well. So what you want to be doing is getting that front ride height as low as possible before you end up scraping the front of the car along the surface of the road. I would say anywhere between 20 and 22 is a good rule of thumb to apply and to be going with. A second area to be applying this with though is also over curbs, such as turn 1 at Singapore. You're attacking that curbing very much and very heavily, so you want to be thinking about adding a little bit front extra ride height to get up and over that curbing, to not bottom out and to maximize the grip potential of the car as well. So that's just 2 rule of thumbs that you really want to be thinking about, getting that front ride height as low as possible before you start losing top speed potential, and then also getting that front ride height to a point that you can get it up and over the curbings as well. Of course, if you go too low on the front ride height, it's going to end up with massive understeer during the corners as well. But in all honesty, checking the front ride height for it costing you top speed potential is an easier way of checking if the front ride height is too high or too low versus relying on your feeling during the corner, because if you have understeer during a corner, it's very easy to start chasing other setup items around the track, such as front anti-roll bar, front downforce level, front suspension stiffness maybe, you know. So it's really hard to feel the difference between 20 and 21 when on the track around a corner. So you can check if your front ride height is too high or too low in those parameters, but ultimately I think it's more efficient to be checking it on the straight anyway. So the rear ride height is really interesting. At least from the knowledge that I have at the start of the game, they basically disconnected a lot of the drag and the friction from the rear ride height. I think it was to help us keep up with the AI on a straight line. Again, I'm doing that by memory, and again, I don't mean it in a disrespectful way to the developers, not at all. But yeah, I think a lot of that rear ride height drag and friction was disconnected to make it a bit easier to keep up with the AI on a straight line, because the AI are very, very fast on this year's iteration of the Formula 1 game in a straight line. So the way that you want to be checking the rear ride height is by 2 parameters. The first one quite simply being in high-speed corners. You want to be checking that you can get through a high-speed corner without having snaps of oversteer. Cops Corner is a great example around Silverstone, as running it on 40, to be honest, I think is like the fastest way to go about it, as it's getting the rear ride height as low as possible, maximizing the ground effect of this car and getting the most grip and performance out of it as a net result. But like I say, Earlier in the game development, they disconnected the friction, so you don't actually have to worry about the rear of the car bottoming out because it's not going to do anything. 40 rear ride height is not going to cost you any top speed potential, or any top speed potential that's worth noting anyway, so you can get it as low as possible, and the only criteria that you really need to be thinking about and to be worrying about is your stability in high-speed corners. So I like it on 40 here because I feel like I can control the car during Cop's corner, but as you can see right there, we had a small snap of oversteer as we went into the corner. So if you're not comfortable dealing with the car having these kind of snaps of oversteer in the middle of the corner, then you want to be going higher on the rear ride height. What's actually happening there fundamentally is as you go through the corner, as you can see, the rear of the car is squatting quite a lot on the rear left, and it just bottoms out slightly as we put the maximum load of the car into the corner. And then, yeah, you can just see it bottoms out. We get the snap of oversteer because basically as the car bottoms out, it stalls the airflow underneath it. And without the airflow, you're losing like 40-45% of your grip. So that's why you have this like wiggle of oversteer. Once the airflow is reconnected underneath the car, then you get your stability and you get your grip back. But yeah, if you're not comfortable living with that kind of small twitches of oversteer, well, in this situation it was small, in other situations it may be big, but if you're not comfortable living with that rear instability in high speed corners, then you do want to just go up in the rear ride height increments of 1 or 2 until you find stability that you're looking for in the high speed corners. The other criteria that you're looking for is also going to be curb usage. So tracks, like I say, Singapore is a good example for curb usage. You want to be increasing that rear ride height just to a point that you can get the car up and over the curbings very efficiently, very easily, and once you do that, you're flying, you know? Well, hopefully not literally. Hopefully you do get over the curbing without bottoming out. Otherwise, if you do bottom out on the curbing, you might literally be flying. Anyway, back to the point. Yeah, you just want to be testing that rear ride height for high-speed stability, but then also curb stability, and providing you can meet both those criteria, then you can just get the rear ride height as low as possible. Moving on to the next setup area in the garage, and that is going to be the brakes of the car. So brake pressure we're going to start with, and basically what that is just a cap on the brake pressure. So if I go all the way down to the lower setting of 80, at most I can only achieve 80% brake pressure in the game. So although on the HUD it will show me pressing 100% with the red bar, what indicates my brake pressure, it's just in the physics, basically it means that I can only have 80% of the brake pedal available to me. So even though I'm pressing 100% with my actual physical pedal, it's just going to be a hard stop within the physics of the game, meaning that I can only press 80%. I would say this is only really usable if you're getting used to running no ABS, but apart from that, I really wouldn't advise taking it lower than 100%. The braking bias is as it sounds. The front brake bias is how much percentage of the force is going to the front or rear tires. In this situation, it says front brake bias, so when we have 55%, that means 55% of the force is going to those front tires, and when we have 60, it means 60 goes to the front and 40% goes to the rear. As a rule of thumb, on F1 2025, I really advise anywhere between 55 and 53 on the braking bias. Any lower, the rear starts locking up and sliding around a bit, and any higher, you can lock up the front axle quite easily. This is a tool to play with during the race, in my opinion. As you get more rear tire deg and you get a lot of the car sliding during the stint, then I would really advise upping that front brake bias to just aid the stability of the car, because ultimately, the more front brake bias you have, the more understeer you're sort of going to naturally generate with the car as a result of that. Of course, up to a point that you're not locking the front axle. But yeah, the more front brake bias you have, the more responsibility you put on the front tires and less responsibility you put on the rear tires. What can help as the tires degrade during a racing stint, bringing better stability. So yeah, after like 20, 25, maybe 30% tire deg on the rear axle, then I would always think about upping that front brake bias by 1%, just to aid that stability as well. Holy moly, we're up to like 30 minutes. Jesus. Okay, we've got one more setup item to go, and that is going to be your front and rear tire pressure. So as this sound is just going to be the tire pressure that you have. The lower that you go, the better contact patch you're going to have with the road, but it also is going to bring quite a bit of instability. So when you're driving, and the suspension and the tire pressures really work one in hand, I should say. So a lot of the suspension actually comes from the sidewall of the tire. So if you have too soft of a tire pressure, what it's going to end up doing is over compressing it, and it is going to work like a suspension. In theory, and actually in actions and in physics as well, because it is a true thing that can happen, the softer and lower that your tire pressure is, the better your car will be over the curbings. Quite simply because if you have a rock hard tire pressure, when you go over a bump, it just will, you know, be rock hard. The same as in your road car on the road, you know. Even your bike tires, the higher that you have your tire PSI, when you hit a bump, a pothole, whatever in the road, if you have really high tire pressures, you know, you feel like a thud, you know, because there's no flex in the sidewall of the tire to be absorbing that impact. Whereas if you have quite low tire pressure, there's a much more flex in the sidewall of the tire to be adapting to that bump or imperfection in the road, i.e. on a racing track, curb usage and bumps are a big factor of that as well. Downsides to that though, if you do have too soft of a tire wall, it can just mean that the tires are really hard to predict, and it makes it really difficult to adapt to the grip going around the corner, as the sidewall can be flexing and moving quite a lot in that situation. The same is also true for the rear, but of course there's different presets for the PSI going here. So we have maximum PSI selected within the game at the moment, and that means we can have 29.5 on the front and then 26.5 on the rear. So although, you know, they seem like the same when you look at them and you just say they're maximized, in actual reality, to have the same PSIs from the front to the rear axle, you need to go more or less halfway down on the front and maximum on the rear. As you can see now, we have both 26.5 PSI on the front and 26.5 on the rear. So that's just something to keep in mind, that when you have both front and rear maxed out, they're not actually the same PSI. Generally speaking, I like to keep the maximum PSI on the front just to help with stability going into the corner, and to avoid any sort of overheating and stuff like that, because it's so easy to overheat the tires on this game, especially the surface temperature. The core carcass temperature is not that bad, in all honesty. On some tracks it's disastrous, like Mexico, but the carcass temperature is not that bad, but the surface temperature can skyrocket during the corner, and if you go over a certain tire temperature for a certain tire that you're on, of course it's changing because you have the C1, C2, C3, C4 and C5 tire in the dry compound, so every tire has a different surface temperature threshold to reach. But if you go over that surface temperature threshold, your grip falls off a cliff. So I like to keep the front tire pressures pretty high, to avoid the front tire pressures going over that overheating stage and losing grip as the corner goes on. Whereas on the rear tire pressure, it's really interesting actually. There's a lot of variation that you can do to maximize it and to be making it work for you as well. So if you have it all the way down to the minimum, like I say, you're going to get better contact patch with the road, so this is going to make your traction slightly better, as the tire is going to be molding to the road surface just a bit better, giving you more grip. As I said earlier though, there will be more tire flexing during the high-speed corners, leading to possible instability and sliding around as well. Additionally though, when you go lower on the tire pressures in F1 2025, it leads to more tire heating, what can also lead to more tire overheating as well. So generally the tires are hotter with lower PSI, and as I just previously said, they will lead to tire overheating as a natural result of that. So as a rule of thumb, the higher that you go on your tire pressures, the cooler that your tires are going to be. The lower that you go, then the hotter your tires will be as well. In terms of the car balance though, and how you can be using it to maximize the performance of your lap time, you really want to find the sweet spot of that rear tire pressure to basically be in a situation that you have good rotation from the rear axle, you know, because then the car is having a good rotation, not flexing too much on the rear tire wall, you know, for the tires, side wall, I should say. And then it just makes a situation that the car can be really balanced. So really, you want to be using this to fine-tune the balance of the car. The first criteria I would look for is making sure that you're not overheating the tires, because if you're overheating the tires, is a disaster. So yeah, make sure that you're not overheating the tires, and if you are on tracks like Mexico, it's impossible to not overheat the tires. So just keep that with a pinch of salt and keep that in mind, you know. But yeah, first criteria, try not to overheat the tires. Second criteria, I would say try to get that rear tire pressure, generally speaking, as low as possible before you start getting instability in the high-speed corners or corners in general. And once you start getting that instability in the high-speed corners, probably it's the lowest that you can go on the rear tire pressure before they start falling over themselves. So we're just going to go on track right now, and I'll put the rear tire pressures to minimum and just show you some areas that you can be looking out for with how the tires can be falling over themselves and just be losing a little bit of stability. So what will end up happening in the low speed corners, to be honest, it'll be completely fine. The traction will be even better. Like I say, the softer PSI will help the tire mold to the road, giving you maximum grip potential. But through high speed corners like Abbey here at turn 1 at Silverstone, it can just lead to a little bit of instability because the tire will be flexing too much and be giving too much travel, to be honest, in that moment, and it can be really sapping for confidence. Generally speaking, as a confidence thing, I like to have higher tire pressures because I don't like the sidewall moving around too much when I'm driving, but that's just a personal thing, and lap time comes before that, to be honest, and you have to be setting up the sidewall and the tire pressure for maximum lap time potential before you start overly worrying, let's say, about a comfort factor. But this is really where the rear tire pressure can come into its own during Copse Corner, and as you can see, it's just sort of squatting down quite a lot at the moment. In time trial, it's okay because there's no tire temperatures enabled, but as you go through these corners in GP mode, career mode, online races, etc., anywhere that tire temperature is enabled, then you end up in the situation that the tires can overheat, and then because of that overheating, lose grip, stability, and confidence as the corner unfolds. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Holy moly, I've been recording this video for like 37 minutes. That's a long one. But yeah, hopefully this has helped you. I really hope it's helped you, to be honest. I'm gonna go have like a cup of tea because I've just been speaking for like nearly 40 minutes straight, so you know, good old cuppa. But yeah, hopefully this video helps, and that has been the complete setup guide for F1 2025. My name's been Brendon Leigh, and thank you all for watching, and yeah, catch you next time. Grazie ragazzi, ciao ciao, bye bye.